And we're almost at 1 o'clock, so once it hits 1, we will start with 1. There we go. Hello everyone. Thank you so much for being here and for attempting to introduce yourself in the chat, because I didn't turn on the chat feature, but it's on now, so feel free to do that while we do introductions. So thank you for being here, for showing up as half the battle, tabling in community. Take care of yourselves however you need to during this panel. Shouldn't be super heavy, but you never know what can come up during these kinds of presentations. The attendees' microphones will be off during the presentation, but all of the panelists can speak. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, because I have the chat up. If you put them in the Q&A, I might miss them. So just pop them in the chat so we can get those answered for you. So super excited that you're all here and that we have all of our panelists here. It's going to be a great conversation. So before we begin, Women's Advocates is a nonprofit organization. We are the host of this panel. And so we are in St. Paul, Minnesota, and we offer a continuum of safety through our prevention programming, like these panels, emergency shelter and advocacy services, and housing stability services for victims, survivors of domestic violence. We began in the 1970s as a legal advice helpline that supported particularly women at the time who were seeking divorce and legal name change. On the helpline, legal personnel found that many women were faced at a crossroads between experiencing abuse in their homes or being homeless and on the streets by themselves or with their children. They wanted to create a third option for the people who were in this position, and by 1974 had rallied enough money to purchase our first safe home to shelter women and children who have experienced abuse. In the almost 50 years since, we've expanded our shelter and is now 3 connected homes, and have updated our mission statement to better reflect what it is that we believe, which is to walk with victims, survivors, and break the cycle of domestic violence. You can learn more about our organization at wadvocates.org. And so I'm going to read our land acknowledgement, which we read at every presentation that we give. So Women's Advocates work takes place on the Dakota land, the area that is now St. Paul was stolen from the Dakota people by the American government through centuries of wars, broken treaties, and acts of cultural genocide. Through incredible perseverance and resistance, the Dakota are still here and strong. Native women and girls face the highest risk of domestic violence, sexual assault, and intimate partner homicide. We express our gratitude for the Indigenous-led organizations who are working each day towards a world without domestic and sexual violence, and as an organization, we commit ourselves to supporting tribal sovereignty with the same fervor that we support the self-sovereignty of victim survivors. I will put a link to our full land acknowledgement in the chat for you folks. All right. So today's agenda. We're going to start with our introductions. We're going to talk to all of our panelists. We're going to talk about being present, getting started first is the beginnings of tabling, being present while we table, the aftermath of what happens after we table, and engaging with the community. So as a reminder, just take care of yourselves during this webinar. The PowerPoint slides and certificate of attendance will be available at the end. They will be QR code links, so please feel free to use those at your leisure. The recording of this webinar will be emailed along with the other resources. All right, so let's meet the panelists and why they felt it was important to be a part of this conversation. So to start off, my name is Jo. I'm a community education and outreach advocate here at Women's Advocates. And I think it's important to be part of the conversation because tabling is primarily 90% of what I do for the organization. I'm sure everybody else's introductions are going to be a little bit longer, but I've been talking now for at least 5 minutes. So I want to hear the rest of the panelists and who you are, what you do, what your organization is. So who would like to begin? Actually,
I can go
yeah.
next because we work together at
Well,
Women's
that and we
Advocates.
have the
But yeah, hello everybody. My name is Rose, and I am also one of the community outreach advocates at Women's Advocates, and I get the pleasure of working closely with Joe. And we table together all the time. And so, yeah, this is also my job. This is what I do. And we talk about this all the time. So now we get to kind of share any knowledge that we have or any information that we have with the public. And so, yeah, glad to be here.
Nice. And now we'll go to Hunter.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Hunter Beckstrom. I use he, him, and his pronouns, and I work at the Minnesota Coalition Against Sexual Assault, or MINCASA, and I'm one of our prevention program coordinators. And why this event is important to me is because I think for an individual community member, knowing so many different resources is virtually impossible because there are so many great resources. And so just standing in solidarity with community and actually having a presence out in community to share space with folks is really, really important, and happy to dive into more information with everyone today.
And Khalees.
Hi, I'm Khalees Smith. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm the outreach program coordinator for SOS. We work with anybody that has experienced sexual violence any time in their life. I think this topic is important because it's I do a lot of trainings and presentations, but tabling is different. You get that more close one-on-one. And I feel it's an opportunity for me to get some information out to individuals in the community that I may not come in contact with, or that I may not have an opportunity to get that message to them. So I kind of like that. I like tabling because I like that one-on-one that you get with individuals. And even though it's a short period of time, it's important.
And then next we have Letitia.
Hotep, and hello everybody. My name is Sister Letitia, and I go by she, her pronouns. And I am the founder of Filling in the Gaps. And why tabling is important to me, I think I do tabling a little differently than most folks do. First, we have a conversation about what it is the community feels it needs. Then we have a couple circles about it. And in between that, with them telling me what their needs are, I bring the information that is available for those particular needs that they are in need of. And also, I feel like tabling or doing this work for the Trusted Messenger is different than other work that I do, because it gives the community power in making changes to policies that are already in place for resources. And so it gives them the chance to give their input. And on my last and final convening, circling, tabling, however you would like to word it, I bring back what the answers from the county that particular group is looking for. So we meet 4 times. The first time would be to introduce myself and the work that I am doing, and if they are interested in participating in this work. And then the third one would be, to hear their final message that they want to send to the county. And the fourth one would be the county's resources back to them. So it's a way to let them know what's already in place. And it's a lot of resources that Ramsey County has that a lot of community members are not aware of. Thank you.
Thanks. And Ngozi.
Hi, my name is Ngozi Akobike. I am with Haven. Haven is a nonprofit that provides services to those in need, and they include the homeless, people who are fleeing domestic violence, victims of crime, and just anyone in need. We run also a food shelf. The reason why I think this topic is important is because it's another opportunity to engage and connect with people. You get feedback from them, and it's an opportunity also to give them information on how they can reach you even after the event. It's a form of raising awareness and increasing grassroots support. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so honored that you're all here to join me for this topic, especially because we all kind of target different communities and have different resources. So it's really special that we're all here today together. So we're going to start with our topic 1, which is warming up to table. So for our attendees in the chat, before we start asking our panelists questions, what do you think you would need to consider before you start tabling at a location? And what do you think would make tabling in your community successful? I'd love to hear your answers in the chat. While you do that, we're going to start off our questions for our panelists. So for question 1, what were the first kinds of questions you asked before you started tabling at events? Like right at the very beginning, before you've ever sat at a table, before you engaged with your communities, what kind of questions did you ask yourself, or did you ask other people? And whoever wants to take that question on first can certainly do that.
Before starting tabling, I would like to know who the audience is. Who are the participants, whether they are registered or not, or the number of people we are expecting to at the occasion. What are the start time, the end time? What are the guidelines? Are there certain things that we are not supposed to do? Because each tabling is different, and there may be different guidelines for each event. So those are some of the questions that I would like to know.
I know for me, the first questions that I asked, because we were told where to go. Like it was already set before I started. So my questions were, what's going to happen? Am I going to have a lot of engagement? Am I not going to have a lot of engagement? And my primary question was actually my own safety. Like when we're tabling in community, am I going to be safe at this location? That was the biggest questions that I think I asked myself. How about you, Rose?
Yeah, I was just about to piggyback off of that, because when we started this job, it was kind of already set out for us. They were like, you're going to table here, you're going to do this for this many hours. And so the questions that I would ask myself is very similar to what you both already said, actually. Am I going to be safe here? What's it going to look like? Who am I going to talk to? What is expected of me? And like the community, because we work with victim survivors of domestic violence at Women's Advocates, I was just asking myself, am I going to get to work with a lot of victim survivors of domestic violence? And is this location for that? But yeah, very similar to you. Am I going to be safe? And are we going to get to work with many people and be able to help them through this tabling process? And if we don't, then what? Just asking the questions and then seeing how we can improve from there on out.
It's interesting you brought up the issue of safety. I never thought about that, and is that one is very critical in tabling. And I guess I assume that with safety, the organizers would have taken care of that. But yeah, it's a good point. to take into consideration.
Especially when you're not tabling in communities, like while we are part of like the St. Paul community, like there are people that have different life experiences than us and different ways of engaging within the world. So you have to be aware of that.
Yeah, I never thought of safety either until that day at SPOC. When that lady that knew me from the past was not very happy with me, then I started worrying about my safety. But usually that's not something I think about. I go into a lot of schools and Ramsey County events where I don't think about safety, but I do always want to know who my audience is. And then when I go to schools, I kind of ask what kind of information are they looking for. At some of the Catholic colleges, they always tell me don't bring condoms. And then the other colleges are like, we love condoms. So it kind of depends on my audience, but also the location where I'm going, their guidelines, their rules. Those kind of things have to come into consideration also.
What about you, Hunter? What was your beginning tabling like?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. And so just to offer some context for folks, all of my tabling experience has been on colleges and universities. So do want to put that caveat that that's certainly a particular population and community. But things that come to mind for me are, as you had mentioned, Joe, we might not always be able to kind of share some thoughts with the community organizer about like what the setup looks like. But ideally, I think ensuring, as we're talking about safety, like if we're talking about tabling at like, just for example, like a courthouse, that might feel safe or very unsafe for other folks. Whereas if we're just at a community park, I think that does have a different impact for folks. And additionally, ensuring that it's going to be as accessible as possible for folks, being able to get to that event, being able to maneuver between the different tables and to be able to, hear if there is a speaker. I know that a lot of tabling events do have a speaker either before, during the middle, or to wrap up that event as well. So ensuring that there's safety for all folks involved and accessibility throughout that entire process is very important too.
And then what about you, Letitia?
It's a variety of things that I think about, but I didn't when I think about safety when convening or tabling, I think about PPP, like COVID masks and sanitizer. That's what I'm thinking about along lines of safety. How many people are going to be in the room? Do I need to wear my mask? Is it space for folks to be comfortable in between one another? Those are the type of things I think about when thinking about safety. But I think about the age group of the folks that I am meeting with and what type of things I think they would be interested in before they actually speak with them and they let me know what their interests are. I also have to think about dietary needs because I provide a meal at the beginning of every circle, what people wanting to eat. And I'm a strong believer if I'm working and getting paid and we doing it together, everybody at the table should be. So I also give gift cards out for their participation. So like what I'm looking for before doing a meeting is how many people are going to be present, planning 5 people above what I planned for, and just making sure that there's enough food and sanitizer and space for everyone.
Nice.
Hotep, thank you for that.
So just an open question for the panelists. How did you initially feel about tabling before you started doing this kind of work? Did you have thoughts before you even took your current role about like when you would see people tabling in community?
I've always thought that it was easy. It looked pretty easy when I see people kind of just table and they
Mhm.
sit there and talk and hand things out and talk about things that they kind of already know about. But when I'm in the work, I'm like, oh, this is exhausting. This is a lot. We get to do a lot and we hand out a lot and we need to know a lot of resources and just everything in between. And it's like, oh, this is way more than I thought it was going to be. And so my initial thought was like, seems like easy work. And then being in the work, I'm like, oh, not that easy. Just want to throw that out there and pass that along. Like, not as easy as I thought it was going to be.
I agree with you. And because I also thought it looked easy, and then I didn't realize just the amount of emotional bandwidth it takes. Like, even when we're not having a lot of conversations, like the three meaningful conversations after we're done, I'm just like, oh, like I need to go do self-care now. And that's gonna come later in our aftermath section for sure. How about the rest of you? Like, how did you initially feel about tabling before you started doing it?
Yeah, I kind of felt like you guys. I thought it was easy. I seen people do it and I'm like, oh, I can do that. But there's a lot more that goes into it because there's a lot of different people that come up to your table. So you're always dealing with a different personality. You're dealing with needs that are very different. So it's I feel the same way. I think it's exhausting. I enjoy it. But it's a lot. It gets to be a lot. And you don't realize that until you're done and you step away and you go, oh my gosh, I'm drained. I don't have anything else left for the rest of the day. So I think if you do it right and you put into it a lot and you're serious about trying to get the message out that you're trying to get out, then it is exhausting and it takes a lot from you. Yeah. So it's not easy tabling. And I got to do it alone, just so you guys know.
You're never alone on Thursdays, please.
That's true. That's true.
So even though it may feel easy, but there's still a little bit of nervousness associated with it, you know, especially when you have for something one has not done before, you know, there's some sort of nervousness associated with doing that. So most of us we got thrown in, you know, just go. Arrangements were made and we're just asked to go to the place and table. So and then that's where the nervousness comes, you know. You don't know what to expect. You don't know the kind of people you will meet. And as humans, we don't want rejection. Would people come to my table? You know, are they gonna come to my table or not? Would that how would that feel like if nobody comes to my table? Does it mean that that was a failure? You know, all those kind of emotions and questions. So those are some of the things associated with doing it, the feelings about doing it the first time.
Nice. So let's move on to question 2. What kinds of prep work did you do before you go to table events? Like, what do you physically do? What do you mentally do before you go into table events?
I make sure I know who my audience, who they are, where I am going, what time I'm supposed to arrive, give myself some time, you know, to get there. But then I need to be conversant with the messaging of my organization, you know that and what we represent, so that because it's an opportunity for me to engage people and connect with people on what we are doing. So it's very critical for me to know what we do and the messaging I want to present to people at the event. Make sure I have my brochures, relevant ones, you know, get them ready, because you don't want to bring something that is not relevant to the topic that is being discussed. So have pens ready, and things that will attract people to the table, you know. be it maybe catchy words or something that will cause people to come to the table and engage. And also it depends whether it's indoor or outdoor, whether you have a banner or just a tablecloth. So those are some of the things that I put in place. And get some rest before the day.
Mhm. I think it's worth noting, like if you're tabling outside, like, and it's sunny, bring a tent, or if it's windy, bring some rocks so your pamphlets don't fly away. I've definitely had that experience very recently, just pamphlets all over the ground. What about the rest of you? What kinds of prep work do you do?
Yeah, I kind of I kind of do the same thing. I need to know who my audience is. And that way I know kind of what swag to bring, like, because sexual violence is a topic that people are not running to the table to talk to me about, right? So it's like, how can I get people to come and talk to me? So having some good stuff, county got some money to buy some swag. So I have some good stuff to lure people to the table, big bags of candy, hand sanitizer, pens, anything free that I can give away is what I do. And then, like I said, it depends if I'm going to high schools, then I'm going to bring certain stuff. I have stress balls, and I know that the high school kids like those, so I bring those. But just so I can get them to the table. And then I always think, okay, what do I want them to know? I probably got their attention for like 30 seconds, maybe a minute, maybe 2 minutes if I'm lucky. But what do I want them to know, and what do I want them to take with them? And to me, that's the most important thing. What do I want them to leave with? And that's kind of what I think through as far as what I'm going to tell them. Of course, I'll have all my brochures and all that kind of stuff, but what message do I want them to take is what I'm mainly concerned with, because I know I only have a certain amount of time. So that's kind of what I'm thinking of before I table.
I would have to agree exactly with what Khalees is saying there, just because I'm sure that every single organization that we represent today are amazing and there's tons of different programs. And it's like, how am I going to have a quick elevator speech to like wrap up like my 6 different programs that my organization has, right? And ensuring that the language that I'm using is going to be accessible. So I'm not throwing out terms or acronyms or things that might not be impactful or familiar with the community or students that I'm connecting with. But also, like, as we're kind of saying, we don't want to just give out a contact card or just a stress ball. Like, how can we, and the information that we share, offers a step in the direction of potentially like volunteering or attending more events such as these, right? And so how can we have some actionable approaches behind what we're providing, whether that's through what we say or the information at our tables? And one example that I can share is the most recent tabling experience I had. We actually had one of our most popular annual events coming up a couple weeks after that tabling event. So we actually had just printed off a flyer and a QR code that folks could utilize. And typically this event was like $30 a person, but we had advertised that day, like anyone who signs up today gets like $25 off. So it's only $5 to attend the event. And so how can you have that actionable change over time to be able to, provide that to your community?
And what about you, Letitia? I'm sure like for like the prep work is a lot different for you.
And it is a little different. Not that I haven't done just tabling before, but in this particular work, I think about will I need an interpreter or not? Who am I speaking to? Is an interpreter needed? Like I said before, dietary needs, being safe on food that's good for everybody. So I'm not having to do more than 2 different choices. And yeah, like I said before, just thinking about who I'm speaking to, and setting the tone, making sure that I take things that represent me in order to set the tone for the space that I'm in, for the table. You know, I'm not redecorating their whole room, but I do bring certain pieces that allows for different type of energy to come in, and really depending on who I am going to be facilitating with and for. I do some self-care before I leave, some affirmations and some sage, before and after. Sometimes there's a lot of folks in this space that suffer from mental illness or that have experienced domestic violence. And with that, it comes a lot of their trauma comes into the room with them. And yeah, in order for me not to take it home with me, I do some saging, some affirmations, and sometimes things get heavy, and I actually have to immerse my self in water in order to rinse the day off, and do some heavy smudging around the fire.
Nice.
Thank you for that.
So for this last question, we've got a few, so speak to whatever you like. But what kinds of pre-self-care do you do to maintain good boundaries and prevent vicarious trauma within the communities that you engage in? I know, heavy question. And how do you emotionally get yourself ready to table in communities with excessive trauma?
I think I kind of answered that question with the last question with the saging and whatnot. Could you ask the other half of the question again?
Sure. So the first one is, what kinds of pre-self-care do you do to maintain good boundaries and prevent vicarious trauma? So taking on other people's trauma when they bring it to you at the table. And how do you emotionally get yourself ready to table in communities with excessive trauma?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, it depends on who I'm facilitating for. Sometimes I make sure I have my head covered, depending on who I'm facilitating for. If I'm in a room full of mixed people, I make sure I cover my head. It's just certain things I do for myself as far as self-care. Have my things that bring me energy and that I feel like protects my energy, keep them in my pocket or wear them around my neck, and just do things to culturally uplift myself, so when others do bring their trauma, and sometimes drama into the space, that I'm not directly affected, like I'm not completely depleted once I get home. I have small children and they need me, so I still need to be able to function when I leave that space. And sometimes if you're not careful, other folks' energy can attach onto you, and you're like, what's going on? And that's it. You got other folks' stuff with you. So I just make sure I'm smudging, covering my head, and have my stones in my pocket. Okay.
I relate to a lot of that. For me, I always make sure I eat first, because I'm going in to, and Rose is like nodding because she's like, yeah, I know the food that you have on your desk. Like I make sure that I have a meal before I go, because I don't want to be a grouchy pants, because I'm not me when I'm hungry. And I also always hold, like, I don't cover my head because I like my hair. Like I like, and when I have hair, but I don't have hair right now. But I also always hold that tabling is a limited amount of time, and whatever problem that somebody's bringing to me is not mine. I can help them, but I always have to like remind myself, especially when it's like really traumatic, this isn't mine. This belongs to this other person. I get to send it off to that other person, but I can try to make it at least a little bit better. So as long as I hold that little nugget. Ngozi, you wanted to add something to the conversation.
Oh, I wanted to say, part of it is becoming self-aware, even before going to tabling, you be self-aware of yourself, being aware of yourself and your emotions. That way you get prepared. If you are not in a position to be in the place, then it is best for the individual not to attend. Another thing is also to make sure that you are to go with some people. I know that may not be possible for everyone to have another person from the organization to be at the tabling, but the critical thing is to be self-aware, know how you are, your mental state, and if you are in a position to expose yourself to other trauma in the community. And that's one of the ways one can get ready for such.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on this topic? Because it's a real, I mean, vicarious trauma, especially for all of our organizations, is a real thing that affects a lot of us. So how do you stay grounded?
You can take a breath, step away. If you need to step away, take a deep breath, and come back. Because this is vicarious trauma is at times we don't recognize it. At times we are having it and we don't recognize it. At times we don't pay attention to that, but it's something that we have to pay attention to. And if we see ourselves being pulled down, we can step away and take a deep breath, recollect ourselves, and come back if we need to.
Yeah. Rose, how are you dealing with the vicarious trauma that we experience?
Yeah, so I'm very big on boundaries, as you know, as Joe would know. But for example, like if work ends at 4, I am done at 4. I'm not talking about work. I'm not answering emails. Everything can wait till the next day. And the same thing goes for tabling. We table for about like 4 hours. Within those 4 hours, I'll do what I can. I'll try to help however I can in my element, doing everything that we can. Before that and after that, I don't want to think about tabling anymore. That's my time to step away and be like, I'm gonna take a breath. Exactly like what we just kind of talked about. This is again, because we think it's like easy work on the outside looking in, but when you're actually doing it, it's a lot. And so before that, after that, I need to take my moment, take my time, step back from all of that, and have my boundaries straight, because in order to better help the community, I do also need that boundary and that time for myself. And I've been told before that when you have good boundaries, you become more sympathetic towards the people that you're working with. And I always want to be 100% present when we're working with victim survivors of domestic violence. It's not a light topic. And so when I'm working with them, I want to be 100% there for them. And in order for me to do that, I need those boundaries in place. And so that's kind of how I deal with it. And sometimes I have to be very strict with it, very rigid with it, as Joe would know.
I love that you talk about time boundaries, because that brings us in to the next section. So let me move forward here. Okay, make my mouse work. There we go. So we're going into theme 2 now, which is being present in the moment. Before we start with our fabulous questions, let's ask the attendees another question. So in the chat, what do you think are boundaries you would need to have when working with vulnerable populations? I love talking about boundaries, so I'd like to see your answers. And also, what are some communities where you table at currently? Love to see if you all are actually tabling. While you do that, let's jump into the questions. So, question 1. How long do you decide, or how do you decide how long you table for? Do you table the whole event or do you do part of it? And how do you balance the needs of each person that comes up to you when tabling the event? While one could be in crisis and one could just be seeking information or just seeking to eat all your candy.
I think for me, Joey, usually it's set, like the time is set. Like I'll go to Hamlin and they'll have Take Back the Night. It'll be like from 4 to 6. So I'll do from 4 to 6. Usually the time is set. If it's not set, I was at an event this summer. I can't remember what it's called, but it was with the Rice Larpenter Alliance. And they had, their event was from 10 to 3. So I was supposed to table from 10 to 3. And because the traffic was so heavy and so many people were coming through, and it was such a great event that I stayed until 3 o'clock because I had people always at my table. I think if it would have died down around 2 or 2:30, I would have started packing up. But if I have still people coming in and wanting information and wanting to engage, then I'm there. I'm there for as long as they're there. Well, okay, I shouldn't say that. If they want to be there 8 or 10 hours, I'm not going to do that. You guys know what I mean. If there's an interest, I'm not going to walk away from the table and say, "Oh, I'm done now," because that's why I'm there, to get that word out. So yeah, usually it's set. If not that, I kind of play it by ear. And then the second part, I think if somebody comes up to your table and they're in a crisis, like that's a priority. You need to deal with them first. I've asked people, "Hey, can you come back in a few minutes and talk to me? I need to talk to this person right now." Or, can you step away so I can have some privacy with this person, those kind of things. And I think people understand that. I haven't had any problems with that, but I think if somebody is in crisis, it is an opportunity to to make that a priority and to help them right away.
I can jump in and answer that second half of the question. And so I think this really depends on your organization and the capacity of staff. That being said, at MNCASA, we typically always try to have 2 to 3 people tabling at the event. And I want to be clear, like that's not always possible because of, for example, if you are a direct service organization or you have few staff that day, but MNCASA is able to do that because we are not a direct service organization. But this really helps because obviously we can set up and take down faster. And we also really try to strategically have folks from different types of programs, because I can speak about prevention all day, every day, but I can't talk about policy or our sexual assault kit initiative, whereas other staff can. And so trying to have a variety of expertise across our organization. And we also typically try to have a communications person that is, taking videos or photos for our social media platforms, so many things like that as well. But also specifically, about this situation, like if one person is just wanting information whereas another person might be in crisis, I think having multiple staff tabling is very helpful. And additionally, seeing if you can try to talk to the event coordinators in advance, because if you are in a large space, how can you maybe automatically reserve a room or two on campus, for example, that is very close by you, so you can have a more private or confidential conversation with that person who might need those services or resources. So those are some things I'm thinking about, but again, want to be very clear that every organization's capacity and staff amount that can be there is going to be very different too.
So I think so. So to answer my own questions, we don't decide how long we table for. That's set for us. But there are certain events that we table, like when we did Indigenous Peoples Day, where if we're having more than one person at the table, like the other person can step away and go enjoy what's going on. Or when we tabled at Pride to have that. So I always think it is really important to have more than one person at the table if possible. Some organizations can't afford to do that or they don't have the staff for that. So I think Women's Advocates is really lucky that we have the staff that we have that are tabling. The balance, like to balance the needs of each person. That's why another reason why it's so important to have multiple people at the table is because someone can come to the table in crisis, and either Rose or I could take that and have that conversation. And then somebody wants to come spin the wheel and eat candy. We can have that fun interaction while that hard conversation is happening to the side. So we can multitask when we have multi people at the table. Um, what about the rest of you folks? What do you think about these questions? Or Rose, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm very happy that there's two of us all the time tabling. And exactly like you said, sometimes people are coming and they just want to spin the wheel and eat candy and be like, what do you guys do? What is this? What is that? And or you can take that on, and then somebody else comes with like a much deeper, darker, traumatic experience that they want to talk about, and then the other person can take that on. And it's happening like at the same time, at the same table, in like the same event. And I'm always trying to advocate for that when people talk about tabling in other organizations. I would love for there to be more than one person tabling, just because, again, it's a lot. It's exhausting. It's not as easy as it looks. And so, yeah, I personally very happy that there's the two of us tabling. And like Khalees said, she does it all by herself. And I see how hard it can be when we're at like Spock, and people are like bombarding you. I see how hard it can be for you. And so, yeah, that's what I have to say about it.
I also think, to Hunter's point, it's really important to have not only like people who have different skills at the table, but to have diversity at the table. So I think like when we're both at the table together, it's really great because I can interact with those people that want to be all snarky or whatever, like, oh, domestic violence, ha ha ha. Like I can address that. But like, some women might not be comfortable talking to me just because of my gender identity. So you being there is really helpful in that. So like our differences actually really make us a stronger unit, I think, in my opinion. How about Ngozi or Letitia? What do you think about these questions?
The tabling is usually that time is set. Most of the time is set. So and when it's set, we table for the whole event, except if there is any need to leave early, but the time is set. And with someone in crisis and one just seeking information, and that's why, like you said, where is always advisable to have more than one person there. There are more than one person at our table. So if one is in crisis, that takes precedence over anyone who is just seeking information. And if there are two of us at the table, one, depending on one's expertise, one person will be attending to the person in crisis, and the other person can handle provide the information that is needed. So that's how we do it.
Letitia, did you have thoughts on this question? Or questions?
I did. Um, so most of the work that I do is is accompanied by an elder, in this work and any other work that I do that concerning community. It is so it's always me, my elder, and most of the time a scribe, and that's someone that takes notes. So, and with it being that close contact, I often find that I'm connecting with several people afterwards to kind of warm hand off them to the resources that they are interested in, or because majority of the time I am partnering with another organization or with small community groups. So there is someone that is doing the organizing. So I could connect with that person that's doing the organizing to give them information that I don't already have with me. Or often find myself doing one-on-ones to help navigate folks through the system on what resource they are looking for. That happens more often than not, but sometimes folks are good with the information and they're gone. Like you said, it depends on the situation. But yeah, majority of the time I have someone with me. I have an elder with me that guides my work, and I take time to do one-on-ones, not that day, but we'll put something on the calendar as soon as possible to help address that particular need.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm super excited for this next question set because it's like one of my favorite parts about tabling. So what interactive ways do you engage with the community, and what are your must-haves for your table?
Creative ways to engage with the community. You can ask questions. That's one way of engaging with the community. Through the question, you can start a conversation and get into the topic of the day. You could also if you have catchy words at your table, that will draw people in, and they may want to explore and ask more questions about certain topics. Must-haves. Oh, I don't know whether they are must-haves, but at least you must have something about your organization. You must have brochure that relates to the topic in place. You can have your business cards, because some people may want to know how they can get back in touch with you after that. You can have treats. Those are very helpful. People are drawn to the table when you have treats. Or you can have giveaways if you are able to get giveaways with your company logo and information on them. That's another thing one can have that can draw people to the table.
I think it's fascinating that you started off with asking questions, because at our table we do trivia, and we have a wheel where people spin and we ask trivia. We actually just recently got a Jenga, so we're gonna do DV questions on a Jenga, because DV can topple relationships. Haha, look at that, look at me go. Anyway, but when I think about must-haves, I don't think about organizational literature, because I have it all in my head. So I can spiel about domestic violence and the programs that we offer, and I can give them stuff, but that doesn't necessarily my must-have is actually candy. I can't tell you how many times a conversation has been had over a baggie of candy.
Yeah.
People come to me just for the candy. and then they leave with that message that Khalees was talking about. Like I'll find a message be like, you know, the 1 in 4 women, the 1 in 5 men, like let's have these conversations, so little pieces of trivia that they can take with them and ponder on that. So I would say the trivia wheel, the things that draw people in, and the candy, and in the freebies if we can get them. So shout out to Ramsey County for all of their freebies that they give us that we can give out for
Yeah.
sure. What about the rest of you? What do you think? What are your must-haves? How do you interactively engage with the folks that you're dealing with?
And you know, I want to say, yes, our big trivia wheel, our candy, but like we also get to talk with a lot of adults and kids and teenagers, just all ages, and we get to talk about domestic violence and spread the message about what we do. And yeah, it's kind of just almost funny to me how candy brings us all together sometimes.
Mhm.
Well, I think it's the idea that Khalees had brought up before, like we're talking about different forms of violence that are traumatic, and we're talking about sex and consent. And so typically, like folks are very shy or, you know, are kind of like looking over, but like don't, they're kind of giving off the vibe that they're interested, but they don't know how to approach the space. And so if you can have very interactive or visual things in which people can engage through that way, I think that is incredibly helpful. And then also the language that you are sharing it demonstrates that this is okay and comfortable to have this conversation, because I imagine a lot of folks in that person's life might be very uncomfortable talking about violence or consent. And if they can identify someone or an entire organization that is very comfortable, very out about trying to have these conversations, is very important. And I think what was also mentioned before is kind of this usability or the opportunity to recycle information. And when I say that, for example, at MNCASA, we've kind of had like we pose a question about like, what is the most important thing to you about comprehensive sex education? And so like one option was bodily autonomy, one was diverse relationships, and you know, a few different options, and people could put little marbles in each of these glasses to see over time how that stacked up, and then being able to then share that information, that like actual raw data, on social media or in different spaces to kind of demonstrate this is what community thinks is powerful, or the values of community, right? And so how can we utilize this information over time? Or what was mentioned before, like how can we, like what is that one thing that we want students or community members to take away after they leave your table? Like, is it new information about a statistic like Joe was talking about, or it's like a future event that your organization is hosting, or just a certain resource that you might be able to offer to?
Yeah. I might swipe that marble idea. I'm not sure where I'm gonna put it, but I'm gonna swipe it.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a really good idea. I kind of agree with what everybody is saying. Just trying to get people to come talk to you. I think sometimes too, it depends on your personality, you know. Are you a person that I want to come up and talk to? Do you have a friendly face? Do you seem welcoming? Because I've seen some people table that I probably wouldn't want to go to their table. They don't look like they want you to come up there. They're just there to be there. So I think that goes a long ways too. I'm trying to get a wheel like Joey and Ro. Trying to get me a wheel, get some questions on there. But for right now, I just bring in all my swag that I have. And like I said, we are fortunate to have a lot of that. So I have a lot of stuff that is free that they can take. And I do have 2 big bags of candy too. So once I get them to the table, then I got them. And then I got them for a good minute and a half. I have their attention, and you know, that's when the work comes in. Like, okay, I got them here. Now what? What do I want them to know? What do I think is most important? What's going to help them? Well, what do they think they need to know? You know, those kind of things. So, yeah.
Oh, Khalees, if I had my shade fan when you were like, there are some people that just don't look like they should be tabling. I would be clacking that shade fan
See
right
those
there.
people though. I know, yeah, I've seen those people like, I don't think I want to go to that table. They don't look very inviting. They're not smiling. They look like they're mad because they're there. So there you go.
Like the
Gotta have-
boring old tablecloth, just with like just their pamphlets and a frown. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, who says this? Look at us being all like having tea time here on this panel. How about you, Ngozi or Letitia? Like what ways are Ngozi, but like do you do other things like with your table? Like do you do trivia? Do you have a wheel? I feel like we all have wheels. I really do. Like
I think that trivia is a good idea. So I am gonna borrow it from you. It's like an icebreaker.
yeah. Letitia, how about you? What are your must-haves and do you how like what interactive ways what because you said meals, so I think that's really food brings people together for sure, which candy, but
Yeah. So my must-haves are, like you said, a meal, myself. I gotta have me there, my
yeah.
elder, and gift cards. Those are my must-have when I am convening, tabling, or whichever. But I don't have a wheel, but we do an icebreaker or two. I don't have a wheel, but I am considering it now.
I can't count how many like fairs that I go to, like the resource fairs, and like it's like a lane of wheels. Like yeah. Anyway, um, so yeah, that was why I love that question. Question 3: so it's a two-parter like the rest of them. How do you engage with people who are culturally different than you, and what kinds of considerations do you make in that interaction? And how do you personally emotionally cope with recognizing individual autonomy and choice when working in community? I know the last one's always heavy. I guess I can start with my own questions. So, how do we engage with people that are culturally different? Because we table at Rondo, so we of course have a lot of people of color. To understand that domestic violence impacts people of color at higher rates, especially Native women. Um, so to be more culturally sensitive in that regard. Also, when we table at Spock, to understand that like they don't have necessarily the same economic resources that I do. So to be able to have compassion when they want to grab all the candy, like to understand that from their perspective is to walk in their shoes, to understand that there is resource scarcity or resource scarcity, so they want to take all the things because they don't know when their next things are coming. And I also think when we were tabling at the WIC office, to have documents, and I think it was mentioned in the chat too, of in other languages, because not everyone is going to speak English. So I think having resources or being able to communicate, which is going to be one of my next questions on the later slide. I'm going to share one of my favorite stories, but to um, be able to communicate with folks. And then how do we personally, emotionally cope with recognizing individual autonomy and choice in working in community? That's especially important for women's advocates because giving survivors the autonomy to make choices that weren't necessarily that they've always had access to be able to make choices for themselves. So anytime to give someone the opportunity to choose for themselves, whether it's the color of a toothbrush or if they want something or not, if they want resources or not, empowers them to be able to make other choices for themselves that they might not make at our table. So I think for me, that's super important. How about for the rest of you?
For someone who is culturally different from me, usually I approach with caution because most of the time I like the person to take the lead or ask question. For example, some people don't like shaking hands. Some cultures, the women are not supposed to shake the hands of a male, so one can ask the question, can I shake your hands, all those things. But most of the time I like them to I like them to take the lead. If they stretch out their hands, then I can stretch out my hands to shake hands with them. So but the key is to understand that the person is not of the same culture as I am. That's the key. Once you understand that and know that there are different ways that they can approach certain issues, then I think that's the first step in interacting with people from a different culture. In like what you said, giving people the autonomy to make the decision. One time I went to a food shelf and they packed canned food for me, and that's how they do it. They already have packed food. So once you come, you just pick one and you go. I couldn't use any one of them. They were useless to me. I couldn't eat any one of them. So based off of that experience, in our food shelf, we let people choose. They make the choice of what they want and how much, we don't determine how much we can give them. We let them make the decision of what kind of food and how much that they can have. So, and that's very empowering. It respects the dignity of the individual, and you are sure that what you are giving will not be wasted. Like the one they gave me, I didn't use it. It got wasted. So those are some of the advantages if we give people the autonomy or the opportunity to make the choice or make decisions for themselves, particularly adults.
Nice. So that was great. I love especially talking about food and the importance of choice, because I've talked about that in shelter too, the importance of when we have culturally different folks come into shelter, like, are the meals that we have going to be culturally appropriate for everyone that's in shelter? So I don't think that we think a lot about food until we think about food. So I like that a lot. All right, let's move forward here.
Hotep, this is Letitia, and I would
Oh.
like a go at answering that question.
Oh,
So,
yeah, we can go back.
Oh, I'm sorry if I was too late on it.
No, you go for it.
With different cultural groups, because I told you guys I provide a meal. Sometimes I would let them provide the meal and I just pick up the bill. You know, have them give me the bill depending on what cultural group it is. If, you know, I'm not savvy on what type of things they like and don't like, I let them make the choice. And yeah, like others said before me, letting folks make their own choices. And I think sometimes you have to let things unfold organically. You know, everything that you plan is not always gonna take place, or may not be the topic that you talked about or that you planned on talking about, or you think that they might wanna talk about. So sometimes just letting things unfold organically as they happen, because letting them choose the topic is basically what I do, which either group I am hosting or facilitating. I let them choose the topic. They bring me the topic and we talk about what it is that they
Tisha, I think your volume might have cut off. Technology. This is what happens when we do live events. Which is, if you want to jump back in there, or I'll just keep going. Make it wing it, because that's the live event for you. So theme 3 is the aftermath. So I want to talk about oh, I think we just lost her completely. I hope that we get her back for this last part here. So talking about what it's like to about what happens after we're done tabling. So what are some of your best experiences when tabling a community, and what are some memorable moments? And I'm going to start this one because when I was talking about being able to translate and to have different things that are in different languages, Rose was actually there with me when this guy came up to the table, and I don't speak, like, I mean, I speak a little Spanish, but not like enough to like have, like, I have enough Spanish to like ask to go to the bathroom. So I can like make my way around Mexico, and that's about it. But so he needed resources, and we had a whole conversation on Google Translate, and I got him the resources that he needed. He wasn't specifically looking for domestic violence resources. He was looking for other resources, and he just recognized that I would know what he needed. And so we just had a whole conversation on Google Translate, and he got what he needed, and that was a really special moment for me. So what are some of your best experiences when tabling a community?
I had a I can't remember where I was, but I was at some event. I think it was Roseville, and it was at a community center, and it was a lot of Hmong folks, a lot of older folks. And I talked to this one Hmong lady, and I could just see the light bulb that went off in her head, because she was telling me how her husband wants her to have sex with him every night. And she goes, I do it because I'm married and he's got this piece of paper on me. And then we started talking about consent and how, because you are an individual separate from him, that you have the right to say who, when, and where someone touches your body, and it has nothing to do with him or the relationship you have with him. And so after talking to her for 15 minutes, she goes, you mean I can say no if I don't want to do it? I said, yes, you can. That is your right. And it's just like the light bulb went off, like, oh my God, I have some control in this relationship. I don't have to have sex when he wants to. I can say, no, I don't want to, and it's okay. So I thought that was very interesting, because I know in that culture, you know, sometimes that's like expected, or especially if you're older in that culture. This is something that I've been doing all the time for my husband, so I'm gonna keep doing it. I really don't want to, but because I'm obligated to him and all that kind of stuff. So that was very, very interesting. And then she brought her friends over so I could tell her friends about it too. So more folks could know that, hey, it's about consent. I have a right to say no, and it was really something special for her to know that she didn't have to do it just because her husband wanted her to, that she was still an individual in that relationship. So that was pretty cool. That was a few years ago.
I love that, Khalees, especially being a Hmong person myself. Certain things are taboo, certain things aren't talked
Yeah.
about.
Right.
For sure. And so, that actually relates a little bit to mine because tabling, we don't really see a lot of Hmong people. And if we do, they don't really talk to us.
Yep.
And as a Hmong person, I always want to educate Hmong people more about domestic violence specifically. So I don't have like a specific moment, but any chance I get to talk with my fellow Hmong people about domestic violence, anything of the sort, it's always super memorable to me. So yeah, I just hope I get more opportunities to do that. But yeah, getting to talk with my own people sometimes brightens up my day.
One of my memorable moments, one of them is the time that we were tabling and a homeless person approached us and was asking about a place to sleep. It happened that she had not taken shower according to her 3 days. She's been sleeping under the bridge and had a bicycle with her. So we told her to, at the end of the tabling, we asked her to wait because we didn't have the vehicle that we had, we wouldn't take her bicycle. So we asked her to wait. We were even surprised that she waited for us. We came back to St. Paul, picked up a bigger van, and we took her and got her a room in a hotel. And she was weeping profusely, and it was such a touching moment and memorable. It has stayed with me, and we're really glad that we're able to at least give her a place to sleep, take shower, and rest her body.
How about you, Hunter? I want to hear your best experience with tabling.
I think the ones that come to mind for me are because I think sometimes when we talk about tabling, it's like folks who like have a little bit of interest or like who want to become involved. And my favorite experiences are folks who I guess you could say are like the unusual suspects who might be a little defensive, or folks who like really believe in some of those myths or traditional gender norms, and being able to have like authentic and intentional conversations with those folks. And the ways that we've tried to do that before in other workplaces I've been a part of, like getting eye-catchy kind of like posters, like saying, talk about sex with me, or like talk about consent or something like that, where people are like want to learn a little bit more and might be sharing about what their kind of values or beliefs are, and being able to have like legitimate conversations about that, as Khalees was talking about before. And I'm specifically thinking about like men and masculine folks on college campuses who might, as Joe had said before, like might be snarky or might kind of like hoot and holler at some of the things that might be at such a resource fair, and being able to like have a real conversation with folks, and hopefully just to change that mindset just a tiny bit. I can't think of a actual story, but I think just being able to open up that space a little bit where we can kind of challenge some of those thought processes, I think are really important for me.
Nice. These next two sections, I think, are the most important for the after the table. So how do you decompress after tabling an event, especially if you're tabling for high needs intense populations? And how do you protect yourself from vicarious trauma like we mentioned? And what do you do for self-care afterward? I know these are hard questions sometimes, aren't they? So I can tell you for me, we decompress by, so we will touch base with our boss, like, hey, this is what happened. This person said this strange thing and I didn't know how to respond to it. So we just let the person talk. Because sometimes really when you're at a table, all they want to do is just talk. They don't necessarily, and sometimes they don't even have the mental capacity to engage and take the information with them. So just to let them feel seen for a moment, I think is really powerful. So just to have those good boundaries, to understand that their stuff is not my stuff, that I get to just come back and eat a snack at my desk, raid the candy jar that's or the candy box that's near Rose's desk now, and just be able to leave the table at the tabling event, which we actually do because we don't ever really take a table with us. The tables are supplied by the, so I leave the table at the table place. Like I don't have to take the table with me. And my biggest self-care that I do for myself, which is not for everybody, but my biggest self-care is actually tanning. I will put myself in that tanning booth for 20 minutes, put on some meditation music, and just decompress. So share how I feel, get some vitamin D from that'll probably kill me eventually, and feel good at the end of it. So how about the rest of you? What do you do?
Don't know that I decompress after tabling an event, unless it's really like impacted me. I do decompress after I do outreaches at the hospital. Or if I'm meeting with a client and the story is just so horrible that I can't hold it. I have to go and talk to my coworkers about it. But as far as tabling, it's especially in SPOC, what I learned is that these people have survived before we were here and they're going to survive when we're gone. And I always have to tell myself that. And also, if I see somebody, or if I have a client that's homeless and they don't want shelter, they won't take any services, I have to remember they made it this far. They made it this far without me. And I think that's a good thing to remind us that they survived long before we were here and they'll be okay when we're gone, that we can only do so much. And I can only do so much in 8 hours of a day. And that's it. So I don't really decompress after tabling more than, but it's more or less after I do a outreach with a sexual assault victim at the hospital, or if I meet with somebody and I hear their narrative and I've heard some bad ones, then I go back to my office and I decompress with a coworker and I tell them how I feel. And it's all off my chest, and then I let it go. So it does help to talk about it, to talk to somebody, but I always keep that in the back of my head. And my supervisor told me this a long time ago: you can't save everybody. If you're given 100% every time you work, that's all you can do. And I really take that seriously. I try to give 100% every time I'm with my clients or training or tabling. And that's it. And if things don't work out or if something happens, I did what I can do. These individuals will survive without you. They survived before you were here, before they knew you, before your program was here, those kind of things. And I think that's good just to keep in the back of your mind because the kind of folks we are, and I know the kind of people we are because the kind of work we do, right? You have to be a certain person. Everybody can't do what we do. I hear people say all the time, oh my God, I could never do that. I could never do that. How do you do that? And so I think we have to remember that we can't change the world. We can't help everybody, but this is what we can do, right? And that's okay, because we can all do our part, and that has to be enough, right? And so that's just kind of what I take in the back of my head, that I keep in the back of my head. I can't save everybody. I can give 100%. And that's it. And that's kind of what I try to live by after 15 years in this field. So, so far, so good. I mean, there are some cases, you guys, that I've had from 10 years ago that I still think about. I had one of my clients that committed suicide that I'll never forget about. Those kind of things are always going to stay with you. But also I have some things that are positive that happen with my clients too. And that's what I try to focus on. So, yeah, that's kind of how you got to keep it all in perspective, right? This is hard work. People have been experiencing these things for a long time. We're not going to come in and change it overnight. You know, we have our part and we can do our part.
I love that you said all of that, because it really ties into the last question,
Okay, cool.
which is how do you define success and when it comes to tabling? So what does it mean to have a good tabling event, and how do you measure the support that you give the community?
I think even though it likely sounds very cheesy, I mean, regardless of the fact if you have, 10 folks or 1,000 folks that stop by your table, I think any type of opportunity to share space and be out with community, I think is a success. And just to honestly just borrow from the chat, I'm seeing Alexandra had thrown something in, which is awesome. And Alexandra had mentioned liking to think that this work is like planting little seeds. And so we don't always get to see the seeds grow themselves, but they are still there, right? And practicing that idea and having that gratitude anytime we're in community, even if we might not have reached as many people or given away as many materials as we had hoped, it still kind of, again, plants that seed and hopefully create some long-term change for that individual, but then also demonstrate to community that we share those same values and want to be able to be in that connective, thriving space together.
Mm-hmm. I formed this question based off of the name of the panel, which is showing up is half the battle. If I showed up, that's a success. Like I came, I did the thing, I went back. That's a success. It doesn't matter, like, and the government, because if Ramsey County is watching, I swear the numbers matter. I swear the demographics matter. Please keep funding us. But like the really what matters is that I came, I did. I might have had a conversation or two that mattered. I might have given somebody some candy that was having a bad day. Maybe they don't have any connection to domestic violence, but maybe they just needed a Snickers bar to feel a little bit better. Showing up is half the battle, but showing up is also means that I was a success. How about for the rest of you?
I was gonna say the same thing. Like, I came, I did it, I'm gone. And we did it. And Joe and I were always like, we're gonna save the world. And so little by little, we are trying to save the world. And I agree with what Hunter said. Sometimes it's a little cheesy, even when I try to say it too, where I'm just like, you guys, whether it's one person or 10 people or 100 people, as long as we're reaching somebody, it's great. But it's the truth. You are having these meaningful conversations. Sometimes we table at pop-up for hours and we talk to like 2 people or 1 person, and it's just one meaningful conversation within like the full like 4 hours that we've been there. And honestly, sometimes that's enough. Like, we've done it. We've done the thing. So honestly, Joe, I'm right there with you.
how about for you, Ngozi? Like, how do you define success for yourself for when you table?
Yeah, just like you said, once I show up, that's success, and I think somebody said something about planting seeds,
That was our boss in the chat.
Oh, in the chat. Yeah. Yeah. So at times we don't see them, the things that we plant. But we know they are planted, and one day they will grow. And that's it. At times we may not see the result physically, or at times we can see them, when people express their gratitude after talking with you or interacting with you. But as long as we show up, that's, for me, the beginning of success.
Well, it is 2:30. I should have made this panel longer because I had more questions. But I mean, I think we got a lot covered in that 90 minutes of talking. So thank you everyone for coming, and thank you for sharing your stories and how you feel about tabling and all the things. Before we close out, is there anything like that you want to just talk about that we didn't get a chance to talk about, or do you think we covered it all? Is there something specifically about tabling that you want folks to know?
I think your questions were very good, Joey, and I think
Thank
you
you.
pretty much covered everything. When I was reading through them, I'm like, oh my gosh, I hadn't thought of that. Oh my gosh, Yeah, I think you covered it pretty well.
This was not a praise grab, but thank you. Like, well, so I have our contact information for folks. If you want to reach out to any of us, we have our emails and our organizations that we represent. And then some quick things here before we go out. We are going to have another event this month because we're double dipping for December. So on December 14th, we'll have our fabulous Mary Beth presenting Journaling to Bring the Light on Thursday, December 14th. So please join us for that. You can register at that top QR link, or if you want to just see all the events that we have going on, we have that bottom QR link for you. As we mentioned, Rose and I do pop-up advocacy every week. So on Tuesdays, we're at Rondo Community Library from 11 to 3 and St. Paul Opportunity Center from 12 to 3. So feel free to come see us and check out our new Jenga that is going to debut. We also offer our online survivor support group. We are wrapping up our current round of survivor support group. We will start again in January, so feel free to fill out that QR link if you or someone you know needs our 10-week survivor support group. And here is the QR code for a copy of the questions and the certificate of attendance. If you are still here and need that certificate of attendance, please use that code that is at the bottom of the thing. You can email me too, and you'll get the same code, but it's right there for you. And all of our social media, Women's Advocates on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, our YouTube channel. Feel free to take a look at all of the presentations that we have there too. Thank you again, everyone, for being a part of this conversation. I think it was phenomenal. So thank you. And thanks everyone for attending.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.